On our crusade to have every Everdrive, I had the N64, I had the Sega. I have to say the Sega is probably my favorite because of the multi options with the Sega CD and everything else. And if you really want to go the extra mile with the 32X, the option is there. Now we have the modded Dreamcast, and I'm sitting there going like, SNES is a gaping, it's just absolutely missing. And I really, for a long time, I was like, I'm not going to go out because I don't have an SNES. And I was like, I'm not going to go out and buy one of these, am I? I went to the flea market. They go for $100. I was looking for an SNES Junior. These old consoles, if they're in good shape, they're getting very expensive. And I thought, doesn't John have 35 of these things and like 26 of them work? I was like, should I just go ask John for one? But I bought, a Junior, and then I said, I need the Everdrive, and I bought the really expensive Everdrive. And you have this too, the FXPak Pro from Crix.
I got that. It's right there. It's right now. Went over. We had to shoot this weekend. I saw you playing Super Game Boy on there, so yeah. I loaded up Super Game Boy. That's Donkey Kong 94 back there with the FXPak.
One thing that is a little sad though is that Game Boy Color won't play on that Super Game Boy.
Oh yeah, because it's a different system.
It's a different thing. But then I said, well, I need a good SNES controller, and I have some SNES controllers kicking around. I have some third-party ones. I got some sticky ones. I said, no, bro. You're gonna need.
You got to go the 8-bit though. You got to go the 8-bit though.
So there's your RF, and here it is. And I gotta say, like, I have the whatever it is, the SN30, the more generic Bluetooth one. This is like maybe 30% nicer.
Yeah, I have that same one. It's amazing. It feels like it's just a Super Nintendo controller.
Yeah,
Super Nintendo all the way. And then I have the Super Nintendo Junior right there. I just recently modded it with S Video and I filmed it, so I'm going to do an S Video modding extravaganza. I actually modded that because the Super Nintendo Junior only has composite out, but the chips do output S Video and RGB. gotta make sure I don't do the Supreme Court justice.
Notorious RBG, Frankie.
BG. That's RBG, Frankie. Notorious RBG. He doesn't give a scart.
Yeah, I've been playing Yoshi's Island on it a lot, and I've got my CRT is like 9 inches, so it's it looks good under any circumstance, basically.
Pretty much.
And then I said, well, if you're gonna go wireless controllers, then probably you should get a wireless controller for your NES. Because I was actually pretty satisfied with the wired controllers, and I was staring at the SNES 8-bit DOE for a long time, thinking like, I don't like the 2 buttons over the A and B, the turbos.
The NES.
But then I said, fuck it, and I bought it, and it's fine. It's great. It's nice.
Yeah, it's all of their products I wholly endorse. I have that too. I got it in my stocking this Christmas.
The Genesis, their 6-button Genesis controller may be my favorite controller, like retro controller ever. Did you see the trailer to Sonic Superstars?
Yes, I did. It's kind of like their answer to New Super Mario Brothers Wii. Like there's like it's like the 2.5D 3D sprites.
Yeah,
and there's 4-player supported.
I remember in like 2001, I remember thinking, wouldn't it be cool if they made a classic style game, but with 3D models? And then the closest thing we got to that at that time, of course, there would be plenty of it to come, but the closest we got at the time was the adventure mode in Smash Brothers Melee. Do you remember that?
Right.
You played a little Mario level, and then you played a little Zelda level, and I was like, they should make this. I love me some 2D Sonic. I'm always open to 2D Sonic. I think Sonic Mania, I'm with everybody else on this, that like you haven't had any better Sonic than that in a long time. Probably the best thing you had before that was, in that style was Sonic Advance, which I think is a little weak, but it hits the spot. It's fun. I'm excited about this. If the level design is good, which I don't think there's any promise that it will.
And the physics nail it, because there was like a Sonic 4, which the physics didn't. The physics in that weren't quite right.
Yeah, especially episode 1. The physics were wrong. It looked like crappy. The level design was bad. It just felt really slapped together. It was really derivative. The special stages were just straight up the same stages from like Sonic 1. It was just it was very disappointing. It certainly didn't deserve the title of Sonic 4. You know, the successor to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, for fuck's sake. Episode 2 was pretty good. I'm not saying that it was great or anything, but I actually have replayed it lots of times. It's got pretty fun boss battles. There's this cool mechanic that they introduced where you and Tails can get all wrapped up in each other and like kind of like zoom across the whole stage. It's kind of good. And the physics feel pretty good. You know, playing it on an iPhone is not the way to go. Playing it on an Xbox 360 would be what I would recommend. But all I hope is that, like, because Sonic Team has been really far off the mark so many times. Sonic Frontiers, I couldn't even like pick it back up. I remember being like, this is kind of interesting, and then I really fell out of interest with it. That might be a me thing though. That might be like, this is too aimless. I'm not interested.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people, you know, maybe they were kind of charmed by it at first, but it doesn't seem like anybody's talking about it right now.
So I'm excited, and I will definitely pick this up. I will definitely play the whole thing. It's one. There's very few games where I can say I'll play the whole thing. And I was
kind of like tricked at first because they show it like in the beginning of the trailer, like it goes between 16-bit to 3D, kind of as like oh look, we're going to the 2.5D thing,
right?
I kind of wish there was like a skin that you could just like flip the style, almost like Mario Maker, where you could flip the style. That would be kind of cool. So
I definitely thought that that's what it was going to be.
Yeah,
that you were going to be able to like.
But as the trailer went on, they never went back to that. So I'm like, okay, it's just going to be that 2.5D style.
Yeah, it's just it was just a marketing thing. But yeah, there's quite a few other games like that, right? There's I think like they released an R-Type game at some point where you could flip back and forth between like new style and like classic style. Oh, wasn't there was like a Mega Man for, I want to say for PSP, where you could play the original like Mega Man 1, or you can play it like supercharged or something.
All right. And I think in the, like
Powered
there was
Up.
there was one weird one where I think it was Dragon Quest 11. You could switch between like a classic RPG style or the 3D style.
Did you watch Sega Lord X's new video on the Sega Arcade System 32?
I did see the thumbnail that mentioned scaling.
Sprite
and I was
scaling.
like,
so much so it makes it seem as though he knows the memes about himself, or the memes that we've made. I don't think they exist anywhere else.
I don't think he's aware of us.
No, despite our better efforts, our friend Dan joined his Patreon and wrote him a nice letter, said these guys would love to have you on.
Yeah, I basically worship you. I commissioned a painting of him looking like a saint, because he's the patron saint of the podcast, obviously.
Being baptized by the Grimace.
Being baptized with the Grimace. the Grimace descends on holy wings on top of it.
Well, anyway, he reviewed a ton of these. I guess they would have come out in the late 90s, right? Or maybe mid to late 90s. This round of arcade games that Sega made, you know, Golden Axe, Death Adder, the Jurassic Park, Shoot 'em Up.
Oh yeah, those were all awesome.
Every game he showcased, I was like, these all look fucking cool. The sprite scaling is no joke. It was like this.
It's no joke.
This is the most advanced sprite scaling you'll ever see, like in any game. And one after another, he was like, exclusively on arcade, still hasn't been ported to home, still not available on any console. And I was like, oh man, you could, after seeing that showcase of games that look like that, if you sold, I don't know, like 10 of those for $100, I'd probably pay it. If it was ensured that like they'll run nicely, because on my Raspberry Pi, they don't run particularly well. So
yeah, well, even like, you know, even sometimes Arcade 1-Up will sell some of these later titles, and they don't, like, they did like cheaped out on the board or something, and they have slowed down. So
ooh, that's not good.
Yeah, which one is it? I think it's Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I think they cheaped out on the board, and it doesn't run well.
I mean, as it so happens, the Mortal Kombats for arcade are hard to emulate, and I remember their PCB of the Mortal Kombats felt good. You have to use a very particular emulator. You have to use like the MAME 2003 or something. You can't use like the standard one that tends to get packaged with RetroArch.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.